Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle without hurry. Allow the day to soften a little without needing to fall away all at once. There is nowhere to reach tonight and nothing to finish before rest can begin. Only rain in the garden dark, warm glass lit from within, and the quiet shelter of a glass house waiting beyond the weather. You do not need to hold onto anything tightly now. The night will move at its own gentle pace. One path, one doorway, one small settling in after another. If your thoughts drift, that is all right. The rain will keep its soft pattern on the panes. When you are ready, we begin. Tonight's story is called A Rainy Night in the Glass House. By the time you reach the garden path, the rain has already settled into the evening. It falls steadily through the darkness, touching stone, leaf, and soil with the same quiet persistence. Ahead, through the wet branches and the pale drifting mist of the night, the glass house stands lit from within. Its panes catch the lamplight in broken gold shapes, while the rest of its frame remains silver gray beneath the rain. Around it, the garden has already withdrawn into shadow. Shrubs and borders remain only as softened forms at the edge of sight, their outlines blurred by water and the failing light. You follow the path towards it. The stones underfoot are darkened by rain and faintly reflective where the light from the glass house reaches them. Water gathers in the shallow joins between them and slips away into the soil at the edge. On either side, leaves bend under the weight of the weather. Some brush lightly against your sleeve as you pass, cool and wet, then fall back again into the dark. The rain sounds different here than it does in open ground. In the wider garden, it falls freely, touching earth, gravel, leaf, and branch in separate notes. Nearer the glass house, another sound joins it, the finer, brighter pattern of rain striking pane after pane, rib after rib of the roof, then slipping into the narrow channels of the frame. It is a gentler sound than the garden rain, more gathered, more enclosed, as though the weather has already begun to shape itself around the shelter waiting ahead. You slow when you come close enough to see the glass clearly. Warm light rests on the inside of the panes, leaving some sections bright and others dim where leaf shadow falls across them. Water runs down the outer surface in thin wandering paths. Along one pane, the blurred shape of a fern leans into the light from within. On another, the suggestion of terracotta pots rests low in a wash of gold. Higher up, the roof shows only rain, reflected glow, and the dark suggestion of the night sky beyond. The door stands at the side beneath a small overhang of glass and frame. Its handle is iron or brass, darkened by age, and damp, with a little line of water gathered along its lower edge. The step before it is wet stone, slightly warmer in color where the light falls full upon it. Beside the entrance, a climbing plant has worked its way along the outer frame, its leaves shining black-green in the rain. You stop there for a moment, with the weather at your back and the glass house before you. The night smells of wet soil, cool stone, and rain-dark leaf. Yet through the cracks around the door comes another scent already waiting inside. Warmed earth, terracotta, damp greenery held in stiller air, and the faint dry note of wood from benches or staging within. Even before you open the door, you can feel that the space beyond it keeps a different world. You lift the handle and step inside. At once, the air changes. The rain does not disappear. You still hear it overhead and all around, tracing the roof and panes in a soft, unbroken pattern. Yet the air itself has become warmer, closer, and lightly humid, touched by leaf, soil, and enclosed lamplight. The wet chill from the garden remains only at the doorway for a moment, then falls behind as the door eases back into place and the glass house gathers around you. You remain just inside, letting the shift settle through you. The path beneath your feet is laid in old stone or tile, dark in some places, honeyed in others where the lamps strike it. On either side, the glass house rises in green layers. Wooden benches hold rows of pots in different sizes, some low and broad, others narrow and tall. Leaves catch the light at their edges. Clay rims glow softly. Higher up, stems and trailing growth move in and out of shadow where the warmth within meets the cool dark beyond the panes. The lamps are placed with quiet care. One burns further down the path, low enough that its light spreads across terracotta, wood, and leaf rather than the whole height of the glass. Another glows somewhere deeper inside, half hidden by taller plants, so that it seems to shine through them rather than beside them. Together they leave the glasshouse golden in parts and dim in others, with the rain above acting almost like a second veil over the light. You take a few slow steps along the path. The sound beneath your feet is soft and close, quieter than it was outside on the wet stone. To one side stands a row of herbs in clay pots, their leaves fuller and darker in the warm air. To the other, a fern spills gently over the edge of a bench, its fronds arching down into the lamplight. Behind it rise larger shapes, perhaps citrus in tubs, perhaps broad-leaved plants gathered near the warmer center of the house, their forms overlapping until the space seems half room, half living shade. Now and then a drop gathers on the inside of the glass and makes its own slower way downward. Most of the water remains outside, running along the panes and collecting at the frame, but here and there the contrast between warm air and cold glass leaves a lighter misting within. It softens the outer view still further. Beyond the panes, there is almost nothing now, but rain, dark branches, and the occasional faint silvering where wet stone outside catches the lamp. You set down what you have carried, or simply rest one hand on the nearest wooden bench. The wood is smooth from use and faintly warm in the lamplight. The gesture is small, but it marks the moment more fully. Outside, you were passing through the garden. Here, you have arrived. The glass house is no longer something seen from the wet dark beyond it. It has become the space around you, warm, leaf-filled, fragrant with soil and rain-kept growth. You draw the door fully closed behind you. The sound is a soft one, not a shut that excludes the weather completely, but a gentler settling of frame against frame. The rain continues above it once, unchanged, yet now it feels held at a little more distance. The glass house does not silence the night. It receives it differently. For a few moments, you do nothing more than stand and listen. Rain on the roof, rain on the panes, the faintest run of water through the channels of the frame, a leaf shifting where your sleeve brushed it as you passed. The quiet stillness of warm air among plants and pots. Nothing in the space needs to be done quickly. Nothing here is urgent. The lamps are already lit. The benches are already in order. The leaves hold their own quiet shapes. The rain will continue without needing your attention. You move a little further in, following the central path as it leads deeper into the glass house. A wicker chair sits at one side near a low table, half in shadow. Further on, a potting bench stands clear except for a folded cloth, a small watering can, and a row of empty terracotta pots stacked by size. Beyond that, taller plants rise where the roof reaches higher, their leaves catching droplets of gold light against the darker green beneath. Overhead, the roof ribs carry silver lines of rainwater that gather and travel downward before disappearing into the edge channels. The warmth inside is not heavy, only gentle. It rests against your face and hands after the cool damp of the garden. The scents deepen as you breathe them in. Earth after watering, clay warmed by lamplight, the green freshness of leaves, and that faint woody note from the benches and shelves. Somewhere close by there is also the lightest trace of something sharper and sweeter, perhaps crushed herb leaf or the skin of citrus warmed in the enclosed air. You pause again near the middle of the path. From here, the glass house feels complete. The rain above gives the roof a quiet, shining life. The panes hold back the garden dark while still letting it remain visible as weather and shadow. The lamps keep their low gold among the leaves. Nothing outside appears harsh any longer. Nothing inside feels exposed. The shelter has taken full shape around you now. Rain remains in the night beyond the glass. Warmth remains within. Between them stand panes, frames, leaves, benches, stone, and light. And as you stand there with the rain sounding softly overhead and the glass house breathing its warm, leafy air around you, the night inside this sheltered place begins in earnest. You move further along the central path, leaving the doorway and its first cool trace of garden rain behind you. With each step, the glass house gathers more fully around you. The panes near the entrance had still held something of the outside world in them. Dark branches, wet stone, the pale drifting mist beyond the path. Deeper in, that outer view begins to soften and fall away. Here the rain belongs more to the roof than to the garden. It sounds higher overhead, finer in some places, fuller in others, passing across the long panes in a quiet, unbroken pattern. The path beneath your feet is old stone, darkened in places by damp, and warmed in others by the low reach of the lamps. At the edges, the joints between the stones hold a little gathered moisture where the air is richest, and the night presses faintly against the glass. On either side, benches and staging run in long rows, holding terracotta pots, wooden trays, and deeper tubs where larger plants rise into the warmer part of the house. Some leaves catch the light directly and shine for a moment. Others remain in layered shadow, their shapes suggested more than fully seen. You pass the first row of herbs. Their scent rises lightly when your sleeve brushes the leaves or your hand moves near them, sharper and greener than the deeper earthy warmth around them. Beyond them sits a cluster of lower ferns, their fronds arching out over the edge of a bench in finer, overlapping patterns. Higher still, broader leaves lift themselves towards the roof, their surfaces dark and polished where the lamp touches them. The glass above holds the rain like a second ceiling of sound. Near the sides, the weather moves in thinner runs, tracing the panes and slipping into the narrow frame channels. Above the center of the house, it feels fuller, more gathered, as though the whole roof is quietly carrying the storm, while the warm interior remains untouched beneath it. Now, and then a heavier line of water forms overhead and slips along a rib before vanishing into the frame. You slow beside a bench where several clay pots stand in a neat row. One has been turned slightly away from the light. You rest your fingers against its rim and move it by the smallest measure, so its leaves face a little more openly towards the warmth. The terracotta is rough beneath your hand and faintly warm where the lamp has reached it. The movement is hardly more than a touch, yet it deepens the sense that you belong here now, not as a passerby, but as someone gently received into the order of the place. A little further on, your hand brushes the edge of a wooden staging shelf. The wood is smooth with age and use, its surface holding a low warmth that feels different from the cool panes and the damp night beyond them. A folded cloth rests near one end of the bench, beside a small watering can and a shallow tray of empty pots stacked one inside another. None of it asks for work. The objects have already been left in readiness, each one quiet in its own place. You continue on. The glass house seems to deepen not only in space, but in atmosphere. The air grows a little softer, a little more humid, carrying the mingled scent of damp earth, warm leaf, clay, and the faint woody note of shelves and benches that have held pots for many seasons. Somewhere among those richer scents comes the lightest trace of citrus, not strong enough to name, only enough to brighten the air for a moment before it folds back into the rest. A lamp burns further in among taller growth. From where you stand, it is partly hidden by stems and leaves, so that its glow seems to gather inside the plants rather than beside them. The light catches droplets left on a broad leaf and turns them briefly to gold. Beneath that same glow, the path narrows slightly between larger tubs, making the glass house feel less like a room arranged in rows and more like a sheltered passage cut through living green. You follow it at an unhurried pace. Now the weather outside shows itself only in fragments. A dark branch pressed against one pane, a silver blur of rain on the roof, the faintest blue-gray tone beyond the glass where the garden remains in darkness. Almost everything else belongs to the interior now. Leaf shadow, warm light, clay, wood, and the low continual sound overhead. There is a chair set near the warmer center of the house. It stands beside a small table, wicker or cane, its shape softened by shadow and lamplight. A folded blanket or shawl rests over the back, and beside the chair, one large pot holds a taller plant whose leaves lift nearly to the height of the window frame. The space looks lived in, though not in any busy way. It feels simply ready, as though someone might sit there on many rainy nights and listen to the roof while the leaves hold the warmth around them. You do not sit yet. Instead, you pause near the chair and let the space settle more fully. Here the glass house feels most complete. The rain overhead is steady and close, but never harsh. The lamps keep their low gold among the leaves. The path, benches, and pots all seem gathered into one sheltered world, separate from the wet garden outside, not because the weather has been shut out, but because it has been softened and received into another form. Outside it was rain on open stone and leaf. Here it is rain on glass above warm air and growing things. You rest one hand lightly on the back of the chair. The woven surface is smooth in some places and slightly rougher in others, shaped by use and time. Beneath your hand, the structure feels steady and familiar. Beside you, the little table holds nothing more than a lamp base, a clay saucer, and a low terracotta pot in which a small trailing plant has been allowed to fall over the side. For a while, you do nothing more than remain there. The rain keeps its quiet, shifting pattern on the roof. Water threads through the frame channels now, and then with a softer sound than the rain itself. Somewhere behind you, a leaf moves back into stillness after being brushed in passing. The warm air settles gently against your face, and hands, carrying soil, leaf, and clay without any one scent rising sharply above the others. The deeper you stand within the glass house, the less the outside matters. Not because it has vanished, but because it no longer asks to be followed. The garden remains beyond the panes as weather, darkness, and suggestion. Inside, the path, the benches, the lamps, and the leaves are enough. You move one step further and glance back the way you have come. The doorway is no longer the center of the space. It is only another dimmer section of the glass house now, with the path leading back towards it through gold light and green shade. Ahead, the warmer middle of the house continues into layered leaves and roof panes carrying the rain. Behind and before, everything belongs to the same enclosed world. You draw a slow breath and let it go. The air here feels fuller than it did at the entrance. Not heavy, only gently held. The warmth has reached you completely now, so that even the thought of the rain-cooled path outside seems distant. Around you there is only this living shelter. The old stone underfoot, the clay and wood at either side, the leaves catching low light, and the roof above sounding softly with weather. Nothing more needs to be done for the night to begin. The lamps are lit. The benches are in order. The plants hold their quiet shapes. The rain continues above the glass. And as you stand in the warm central heart of the glass house, with the path leading softly between lamplight and leaves, and the weather now only a soft presence overhead, the night inside this sheltered green place settles more deeply around you. You turn from the chair and continue further into the glass house, following the path where it leads between benches, pots, and taller growth gathered in the warmer part of the house. The lamps behind you remain low among the leaves, while another glow waits further on, softer, and more shaded, as though it has settled into the plants instead of lighting them directly. The rain continues above in its even shifting pattern, clearer on the roof than at the sides now, so that the whole upper part of the glasshouse seems alive with weather while the air below remains warm and still. A parting bench stands ahead against one side of the frame. Its wooden surface is broad but not crowded. A folded cloth rests near the middle, softened by use and faintly marked with traces of old soil. Beside it stands a small watering can, dull at the handle, and spout where the lamplight does not reach, warmer along its curved side where the glow falls directly. A stack of terracotta pots sits at one end, each one fitted into the next, their rims worn a little smoother from years of lifting and setting down. Nearby, a shallow tray holds saucers, a few labels, and a little dry, crumbling soil gathered into one corner as though someone brushed it there rather than leave it scattered. You come to a stop beside the bench and rest your hand on the wood. It is warmer than the stone path beneath your feet and smoother than the rough rims of the clay pots nearby. Here and there the surface has been marked by water rings, shallow scratches, and darker patches where damp hands, pots, or tools have rested over time. None of it feels neglected. The bench has simply taken on the quiet signs of being used often and well. Above it, the glass is crossed by narrow silver lines of rain. Some run straight down the panes. Others gather beneath the ribs of the roof and travel sideways for a little while before slipping into the frame channels. The sound overhead changes from one section of glass to another. Over the broad central panes, it is fuller and more continuous. Near the joins, it becomes finer, sharper, almost like a quick tapping before the water gathers and runs on. You let your gaze move slowly over the objects resting on the bench. The folded cloth, the watering can, the stacked terracotta, the tray with its saucers and labels, a small brush laid near the edge, its bristles darkened at the tip. Nothing here asks to be handled quickly. Everything appears to have been left ready, not abandoned, and there is a difference between the two. Near the back of the bench, one small clay saucer sits a little apart from the others. It has drifted close to the edge, perhaps nudged there earlier in the day. You place your fingertips against it and draw it back by an inch or two, just enough to leave it properly within the circle of the lamp's reach and away from the shadowed corner of the bench. The clay feels cool on its underside, warmer across its upper surface where the air and light have been resting upon it. It is a very small adjustment, yet the movement settles something in the space. You remain there for a moment longer, then lift the folded cloth and shake it out by no more than a hand's breadth before laying it back down more evenly. The fabric is soft, faintly textured, and still carrying the dry scent of old parting soil and wood. Once it lies flat again, the bench looks a little clearer, a little more at rest. Beside it, the small watering can continues to catch the lamp in a muted crescent, and the stacked pots keep their warm clay color against the deeper green shadows behind them. You move on from the bench and follow the path into another part of the glasshouse. Here the leaves rise larger and closer, some broad and glossy, others finer, and more fern-like where they spill over from shelves or hanging supports. A tub stands at one side with a taller plant lifting almost to the middle panes, its leaves dark at the center and edged with gold where the light reaches them. On the other side, a lower bench holds narrower pots arranged in a line, each one leaving a little space before the next. The air changes slightly as you walk. Near the path, it is warm and gently humid. Close to the glass, especially where the rain runs down the side panes, it carries a cooler edge that touches the skin for a moment and then gives way again to the denser leafy warmth within. The shift is delicate, but enough to make the glass house feel alive in layers rather than still in a single unchanging way. You pass beneath a section where the roof feels higher. The rain overhead sounds broader here, as though the roof panes above have taken on more of the weather at once. The drops are not louder exactly, only fuller, more gathered. Some strike the glass in finer taps. Others spread into running threads that slip along the framework before vanishing into the edge channels. Once in a while, a heavier run forms somewhere above and travels across the roof with a sound that lasts a few breaths longer than the rest before thinning again. To one side, a leaf has leaned too close to the pane. Its edge presses lightly against the cool glass, and a line of moisture has gathered where the warmth within meets the rain-cooled surface outside. You lift the leaf gently between finger and thumb and ease it back towards the center of the plant. The leaf is smooth and faintly springy beneath your hand. When released, it settles into a more natural curve, no longer touching the pane. The glass house is not asking to be managed tonight, only to be shared with for a little while. You continue along the path until you reach another bench, narrower than the first, and set beneath a lamp that glows through leaves before it reaches the wood below. This bench holds smaller pots, a few grouped close together, others resting on low brick risers to lift them nearer the light. Their leaves cast layered shadows across the boards. At one end stands a clay bowl in which fallen leaves and clipped stems have been gathered, already beginning to curl at the edges. At the other rests a low wicker basket with a few empty pots inside, their rounded sides touching with the faintest muted sound when your sleeve brushes the basket's rim. You rest your hand lightly on the bench edge. The wood here is cooler than the first bench, perhaps because it stands closer to the side panes. Beyond the glass, the garden is almost unreadable now. A pale suggestion of stone path, a darker branch, rain, nothing more remains long enough to be held clearly. Within the glass house, however, everything has become easier to read than before. Clay and leaf, wood and light, soil and warm air, rain overhead and shadow between the lamps. You notice one pot turned slightly away from the lamp. Its leaves have lifted towards the light from an angle, and the shape of the whole plant seems to lean with them. You place one hand against the rim and turn it only a little, enough that the leaves face more squarely into the warm glow. The terracotta drags softly over the bench surface, then comes to rest. Nothing in the movement is hurried. The plant seems better placed, and that is all. For a while, you stand there and listen. Rain above the glass roof. A slower run of water through one framed channel. The soft settling of a leaf after you have turned the pot. The quiet warmth of the room gathered beneath all of it. What is most noticeable, the longer you remain, is how little needs to happen for the space to feel complete. A pot turned. A cloth straightened. A leaf eased from the pane. A saucer moved back from the edge. Such small acts do not change the glass house in any great way. Yet they deepen the sense that you belong within it, not as someone passing through, but as part of the same low, untroubled order. You move again, slower now, following the path back towards the middle where the warmer section opens a little wider around the chair and table you noticed before. From here, the benches seem to recede into green and gold layers. Pots glow where the lamps catch their rims. Leaves hold light at their edges and shadow at their centers. Higher up, the roof is dark except where the rain and the lamps together lay a silver gold wash across the panes. The whole glass house feels less like a building arranged around plants and more like a living shelter shaped by light, growth, and weather together. You pause beneath one of the central lamps and look up. The rain above is clearer from here than anywhere else. Every pane carries its own small passage of water. Some drops strike and run at once. Others hold for a moment, bright against the light, then join another thread and slip down towards the frame. Along one rib, a narrow stream forms and travels the length of the glass before vanishing into the edge channel with a quieter sound than the rest. Then you lower your gaze again and look around you. The path beneath your feet, the benches and staging, the wicker chair waiting in half shadow, the folded cloth on the parting bench behind you, the leaves catching low amber light, the rain outside, now only a softened world beyond the panes. The longer you remain here, the less the garden beyond seems like a place you have left, and the more it feels like weather surrounding the shelter. What matters is here: the warm air, the scent of earth and leaf, the lamp among the plants, the path between bench and tub, the roof sounding softly with rain. You place one hand on the rim of a broad terracotta pot near the chair and leave it there for a moment. The clay is warm across its outer curve and rougher near the rim, where the texture catches slightly against your skin. Below your hand, the soil rests dark and damp. A few leaves lift from it in quiet shapes, their edges marked softly by the lamp beside them. The pot feels steady, rooted, settled, as though it has stood in this place for many rainy evenings and will stand here for many more. That steadiness passes into the whole space. Nothing pulls at the mind. Nothing needs to be prepared for. The rain above keeps to its own shifting pattern, while inside the glass house, the benches, pots, lamps, and leaves remain in their places, breathing warmth into the shelter they make together. You draw a slow breath and let it go. The air carries earth, terracotta, leaf, faint wood, and the smallest brightness of herb or citrus somewhere deeper within. It is richer here than at the doorway, fuller than along the path outside, and more enclosed than any ordinary room. The weather has not been shut out. It has simply been softened by glass and warmth into something overhead and beyond rather than all around. You remain there, hand resting lightly on the clay, and let the night settle another degree deeper. The lamps remain low among the leaves. The benches hold their quiet order. The path waits between them. And in that warm, green shelter, with a few small evening gestures now complete, and the sound of rain spread gently above the panes, the glass house no longer feels like somewhere you have entered. It feels like the place where the night has chosen to keep you. You leave the broad terracotta pot where it stands near the chair and follow the path a little further, towards the part of the glass house where the roof rises higher and the rain sounds fuller overhead. The change is gradual rather than sudden. At first, the shelter still feels much as it did a few steps earlier. Warm air among leaves, low lamps held close to wood, and clay, the garden beyond the panes reduced to little more than darkness and weather. Then, as you move beneath the taller span of glass, the roof begins to make itself known more clearly. The rain is not louder in any harsh way. It is simply more present, spread over a broader reach of pane and frame, so that the whole upper structure seems quietly alive with it. You slow beneath the highest section and look up. Long panes angle above you in ordered lines, held by slender ribs darkened by age and damp. Across them, the rain travels in different ways. Some drops strike and slip almost at once, drawing fine silver threads across the glass before disappearing into the framework. Others gather where two narrow runs meet, bright for a moment in the lamplight, then grow heavy enough to move on as a fuller line of water. Along one rib, a shining trail forms and keeps to its path with a steadier flow, while elsewhere the pane is marked only by finer restless motion. The roof does not carry a single sound. It carries many, though all of them belong together. There is the softer tapping of lighter rain on the outer sections, where the water spreads thinly and moves away at once. There is the fuller passage of gathered runs following the ribs. There is the quieter thread of water entering the channels at the edges, traveling out of sight with a muted steadiness before another line joins it. Now and then, from somewhere higher or further along, comes the sound of a heavier drift finding its way across a pane and passing on. None of it breaks the calm. It deepens it. You remain there a little while with your gaze lifted. Below the roof, the lamps continue to burn among leaves and benches, but their light reaches upward only in softened reflections and warm glows at the edge of the glass. Most of what you see above is rain and shadow. Beyond the panes lies only the night sky folded into wet darkness, so that the whole roof seems suspended between the weather outside and the warmth beneath it. The path underfoot feels darker here, though no less secure. The lamps sit lower in this section, partly screened by taller growth and the deeper arrangement of leaves beneath the roof. Their light reaches across the stone in uneven golden shapes, leaving other stretches in green-shadowed dimness. On either side, plants rise in layered forms, broad leaves lifting towards the panes, narrower fronds turning themselves into softer outlines, climbing stems tracing their way up string or frame, and losing themselves where the lamplight fades. You move another few steps and stop beside a narrow standing table set under the central span. It is simpler than the potting bench behind you, little more than a small working surface of wood with a lower shelf beneath. A clay bowl rests upon it, empty except for a little gathered moisture at the bottom. Beside it lies a folded length of cloth and a small pair of gloves left one atop the other, their shape softened by shadow. Nothing here suggests work waiting. The table seems only to belong to the place, another quiet surface among benches, pots, and leaves. You rest your hand lightly on its edge. The wood is smooth, dry at the top, and a little cooler at the side where the air from the glass reaches it more easily. As you stand there, the rain above shifts. For a little while it grows heavier. The change comes first as a thickening of sound across the roof, then as clearer runs beginning to gather on the panes overhead. Where before the water moved in many separate finer lines, now some of those lines join into broader downward paths. One pane near the center catches more of the weather than the others, and for several moments it holds a swift, clear sheet that narrows and breaks apart only when it reaches the next rib. Another section answers with a quicker sequence of strikes, almost bright in their rhythm, before settling again. The glasshouse receives this change without strain. The lamps do not flicker. The benches remain where they are. The leaves hold their shapes. The warm air below the roof stays even. Only the weather alters. And even that feels natural here, as though the roof had been waiting all evening to carry just this fuller passing of rain above the plants and warm enclosed paths below. You listen as the heavier pattern continues. It lasts long enough to shape the whole space for a while. The roof no longer feels like a distant covering over the glasshouse, but like an active part of the room itself, a second living surface above you, answering the weather with pane, rib, and runnel while everything beneath it continues in warmth and stillness. Then, as gently as it arrived, the thicker rain begins to ease, not all at once. One pane first, then another. The longer gathered runs thin back into finer silver paths. The quick tapping on the roof becomes softer, more separated. Water still travels along the ribs and into the frame channels, but now it does so with a more delicate voice, and the whole roof returns to its earlier layered pattern of threads, traces, and quiet downward movements. You lower your gaze and see the glasshouse differently now. The lamps appear richer after the brief heaviness overhead. Their amber light glows beneath the leaves and catches in the wet panes with greater depth than before. In some sections of the glass, the inside of the room reflects itself, so clearly that the outer garden nearly disappears. A fern becomes two ferns, one real, and one held faintly in the pane behind it. The edge of a bench repeats itself in darker gold. A broad leaf catches the lamp and then appears again as a dimmer echo on the wet glass beyond. The inside and outside overlap here in beautiful ways. Rain passes down the panes while the lamp glows upon them. Leaf shadow lies against the glass while the garden darkness waits beyond it. Water on the outer surface catches the light from within and seems, for a moment, to belong to the glasshouse itself before slipping lower and vanishing into the frame. It becomes difficult to say where the shelter ends and the weather begins. The glass does not entirely separate them. It lets them rest together. You turn a little, taking in the space from where you stand beneath the higher roof. The chair near the warmer center remains half in shadow. The broad terracotta pot stands where you left it, its curved rim still holding a band of light. The potting bench lies further back now, softened by distance with its folded cloth and stacked pots reduced to quiet shapes. Ahead, under the taller panes, the path continues between benches and tubs that seem to rise out of gold and green layers rather than sit apart from them. For a little while, you do not move. One hand rests on the standing table. Your shoulders loosen. The warm air settles softly against your face. The rain continues above. This stillness feels different from the pauses earlier in the glass house. Then you were arriving, noticing, learning the shape of the shelter. Now you are simply within it. The space no longer needs to introduce itself. It only needs to continue as it is. Warm below, wet above, leaf shadowed, lamplit, and held inside the rain-dark garden. Beyond the panes, the outside has all but disappeared. A branch may press faintly against one section of glass. A wet path may hold one pale line where the light reaches it from within. But most of the garden has become only a softened darkness around the structure, unreadable and unimportant compared with the interior. The glass house now feels like the truer world, the one made of stone path, warm air, pots, leaves, and rain sounding gently overhead. You draw one slow breath and let it go. The scents deepen here under the high panes. Damp earth below the benches, clay warmed by the lamps, green leaf and stem. A faint, woody dryness from the table under your hand. The air is richer than it was near the doorway, and fuller than in the narrower sections between the benches. Not heavy, simply gathered. A larger leaf near the table catches your eye. It is turned slightly and holds a small bead of moisture at its tip, perhaps from the humid air within rather than from any direct touch of rain. You lift the leaf just enough to see the droplet fall back into the soil below. Then you let the leaf settle again where it was. That single movement is the only action the moment needs. The rest belongs to watching and listening. Rain gliding on the roof panes, water entering the frame channels, amber light caught on wet glass, dark leaves below, the path quiet between the benches. The more you remain beneath this central stretch of roof, the more the whole glass house seems to gather into one complete feeling. Not a series of objects, not even a series of sounds, more a single sheltered atmosphere in which weather, light, leaf, clay, warmth, and stillness are all held together. You glance up once more. The panes above are less bright now, the rain upon them finer again after the heavier passing. Yet the reflections remain, the warm echo of lamps, the soft doubling of leaves, the faint gold seams where light and water meet on the glass. High overhead, one long thread of water travels slowly along a rib before vanishing into the edge channel. Lower down, the pane nearest the lamp glows as though lit from within by both flame and rain. That sight seems enough to hold you there for a while longer. No task presses in. No movement asks to follow. Nothing in the glass house is unfinished in any troubling way. The benches remain in their quiet order. The plants hold their shapes. The table beneath your hand stays warm where the lamp reaches it. The weather overhead continues its soft, unbroken life across the roof. In the deepest sense, you are sheltered now, not simply out of the rain, but inside a place that has fully received it. The roof carries the weather. The panes soften the garden dark. The lamps keep their gold among the leaves. The warm air settles below them all. And as you stand beneath the highest section of glass, with the rain moving above in silver lines, and the whole house of leaves, light, and warmth gathered around you, the glass house becomes not merely somewhere you are standing, but a complete night world of its own, holding you quietly at its center. You leave the standing table beneath the higher roof and turn back towards the warmer middle of the glass house, where the chair waits among leaves and low lamplight. The path feels familiar now. The stones underfoot hold their darker patches where the damp gathers, and their warmer tones where the lamps reach them. The rain still sounds full above, though as you move away from the highest panes, its pattern softens a little, spreading out across the roof rather than gathering so directly overhead. Around you, the glass house remains layered in green shadow and amber light with leaves rising at different heights, and the garden beyond the panes reduced once more to little more than rain, branch, and dark. You walk without hurry. A broad leaf near the path catches a drop from above and lets it fall back into the soil of its pot. Further on, a fern bends over the edge of a bench and brushes lightly against your sleeve as you pass. The lamps remain low among the plants, their glow caught here on a clay rim, there on the edge of a wooden shelf, and further on in the smooth surface of a leaf turned towards the warmth. Nothing in the space draws you sharply. Everything invites you onward by degrees. The chair comes slowly back into view. At first, it is only a softer shape among the plants, its outline partly veiled by stems and leaf shadow. Then the lamp beside it catches the curve of its back and the woven pattern along the arms. A small table stands near it, round or slightly oval, its top holding a low terracotta saucer, a lamp base, and little else. Near one front leg rests the broad pot you touched earlier, its leaves lifting quietly towards the light. Behind it, taller foliage rises nearly to the panes, so that the chair seems set within a sheltered pocket of the glass house rather than out in the open path. You slow as you reach it. The wicker has a warm honey brown tone where the lamp touches it, and a deeper brown where the weave turns away into shade. A folded shawl or blanket lies across one arm, its fabric thicker than the potting cloths you passed earlier, softer too, with a little weight already visible in the way it hangs. The chair itself is neither ornate nor plain. It looks used often enough to feel welcoming, yet quiet enough to seem as though it has been waiting there all evening for just this hour. For a moment, you stand beside it and take in the little arrangement around it. The tabletop is smooth and faintly worn at the edge. The terracotta saucer upon it holds a little gathered moisture that catches the lamp in a muted ring. The broad pot near the chair rests steady upon the floor, its clay outer wall darker near the base where the warmth gives way to the cooler air of the stones. Behind the chair, a few leaves arch over from a neighboring bench, not enough to crowd the seat, only enough to make the place feel nestled within the green shelter of the house. You rest your hand on the back of the chair. The woven surface is smooth in some places, slightly rougher in others, its texture easy beneath your palm. It gives only the faintest sound when you touch it, more a whisper of wicker against stillness than any proper movement. The shawl lies folded over the arm within reach. You lift it and feel at once the difference between its dry softness and the faint, humid warmth of the air around it. The fabric is heavier than it first appears, enough to settle properly once it is laid across you. You shake it out by no more than a hand's breadth, and then fold it once more over your arm. The motion is small, but it lets the cloth fall more evenly, and it releases a faint scent of clean fabric touched by the warm leafy air of the glass house. Beside you, the rain continues across the panes and roof, unchanged by the little gesture. The plants remain where they are. The lamps keep their low gold. The whole space seems content to let you prepare your place within it slowly. You turn and lower yourself into the chair. The wicker receives your weight with a soft, giving sound, then settles. At once, the body understands the difference between walking and no longer walking. The seat curves slightly beneath you, supporting without stiffness. The back holds your shoulders more fully than the standing stillness of the last block allowed. When you draw the shawl across your knees, its warmth gathers there almost at once, helped by the air of the glasshouse and the lamplight close by. You adjust it once, no more. One edge lies over your lap, another falls against the side of the chair. The fabric's texture is softer than the rough clay of the pots and gentler than the wicker beneath it. Once in place, it makes the seat feel less like an object in the room and more like a settled resting place. Your hands come to rest naturally, one over the cloth, the other on the arm of the chair or the table edge beside you. From seated height, the glasshouse changes. The path is no longer the main line running before you. It appears now in shorter stretches between pots and benches, partly hidden by the rise of leaves and the angle of the chair. The roof shows itself between stems and upper growth in broken panes of silver gray rain. The lamps seem lower and warmer from here, their light held beneath leaves and along the sides of terracotta rather than spread across the whole space. Even the reflections in the glass feel different, appearing not as something you look up at, but as something suspended around the upper edges of your shelter. The broad pot near your knee becomes part of the chair's small world. Its leaves rise at an angle beside you, some catching the light along their edges, others remaining dark and velvety at the center. The clay holds a muted warmth on the side nearest the lamp and a cooler tone where it turns away. Beyond it, another row of smaller pots rests on a low shelf, their rims repeating in a quiet curve from one to the next. Further back still, the path disappears into green shade, where another lamp glows through stems and makes the leaves there seem lit from within. You remain where you are and let the room reorder itself around the fact of sitting. Rain continues on the roof above. Water threads through the frame channels. The lamp keeps its place beside you. The shawl rests across your knees. The chair holds your weight. None of these things needs help from you now. They simply continue, and in continuing, they deepen the sense that this is where you are meant to remain for a while. The air feels different once you stop moving. While you walk the path, you noticed warm and cooler patches, humid sections, and places where the rain-cooled panes touch the shelter from outside. Seated here, the air settles more evenly around you. It carries warm earth, leaf scent, terracotta, a faint woody dryness from the chair and table, and the smallest brightness of herb or citrus from somewhere deeper in the house. The scents no longer pass you one after another. They gather into one held atmosphere that seems to rest with you. You turn your gaze upwards through the break in the leaves. From here, the roof is seen in fragments framed by stems and fronds. Rain moves over it in narrow, shining paths, some clear enough to follow for a few breaths before they disappear into the joins. Here and there the lamp catches the water on the panes and turns it to a faint gold thread before the line slides onwards and is lost. The sound above remains steady, softer than when you stood beneath the highest section, but no less present. It is as though the roof now spreads its weather over the whole house rather than concentrating it in one place. The garden beyond the panes matters even less from here. Outside is only dark branch, blurred path, and rain. The world beyond the glasshouse has fallen back into weather and shadow, while the chair, the table, the broad pot, and the close circle of lamplight have become the real center of the night. The distinction feels natural. There is no sense of shutting anything out, only of being more fully gathered into what is already warm, lit, and sheltered. You let one hand rest lightly on the arm of the chair. The wicker beneath your fingers carries its woven pattern clearly. Near the lamp, it is faintly warmed. Further round the curve of the arm, it grows cooler and smoother where the light does not touch directly. The chair has that quality good seats often have, of seeming to remember use without holding any strain in it. It receives the body and then grows still. For a while, you do nothing more than sit and listen. Rain on the roof panes, a softer run of water through one channel, a leaf shifting back into place after a drop strikes it. The deep stillness below the weather, where warm air, clay, wood, and living green all remain at rest. This pause feels different from the standing pauses earlier in the glasshouse. Then, there was always some small readiness in the body to walk on, to touch a bench, to turn a pot, to follow the path deeper in. Here, seated, that readiness begins to ease. The body no longer waits for the next step. The chair has already answered that need by holding you in place. The shawl across your knees has done the same. The whole space begins to turn from something you are moving through into something that simply contains you. The leaves around the chair make the lamplight softer. Some of it is screened by stems and fronds before it reaches the panes. Some of it falls directly across the table edge, the woven chair arm, and the upper curve of the terracotta pot. Some of it remains hidden within the plants, glowing from behind and giving the green around you a deeper warmth than open light ever could. The shadows this makes are not heavy. They are layered, gentle, and full of shape. You shift only enough to settle more comfortably. The chair answers with a slight sound and then stills again. The shawl changes its lay across your knees by the smallest degree. One corner slides more neatly over the side of the seat. The adjustment is minor, but the comfort after it feels complete. There is no need to rise again for a while. No need to continue the path immediately. The warm center of the glasshouse has already come to you. Across the room, the potting bench is now only a low shape beneath its lamp. The folded cloth, the stacked pots, the watering can all remain where they were, but from here they look less like objects waiting to be used and more like part of the settled life of the glasshouse itself. The path that led you there and back now feels gentle and distant, though it lies only a few steps away. Seated, you no longer think in terms of where to move next. The glasshouse has begun to arrange itself around stillness rather than motion. The rain above eases slightly, thickens again, then eases. Each change is small, and from the chair they matter less as weather and more as texture. The roof receives every variation and turns it into something softer. A few fuller runs find the ribs and slip into the frame channels. Then the finer silver threads return. Beneath all of it, the warm heart of the glasshouse remains unchanged. You look once more around the little shelter of chair, table, pot, and leaves. It is enough. The chair beneath you, the shawl over your knees, the lamp beside you, the broad leaf near your arm, the path half hidden beyond the pot, the rain above the glass. This small arrangement gathers the whole larger space into something human in scale and easy to rest inside. A little while passes with no need to account for it. The weather continues overhead. The lamps remain low among the leaves. The benches keep their quiet order. The garden outside stays blurred and dark. And as you sit there in the wicker chair with the shawl warmed across your knees, the terracotta pot steady beside you, the lamp low among the leaves, and the rain sounding softly over the roof panes above, the glasshouse stops feeling like a place you are exploring and becomes, for this part of the night, the place where you have chosen to remain. You remain in the chair as the rain continues above the glasshouse, the shawl resting warmly across your knees, and the lamplight holding its low circle among the leaves beside you. For a while, Nothing changes enough to draw your attention in any one direction. The roof keeps its soft pattern of weather. The broad pot near your chair remains steady in its place. The path beyond it lies partly hidden among benches and shadows. The garden outside is no more than rain-dark glass and the faintest suggestion of branch and stone beyond it. The whole space feels gathered and complete, as though the night has settled into the glass house and decided to remain there for some time. Then, little by little, the weather begins to thicken. At first, it is only a small change in the sound above. The rain that had been moving in finer separate threads across the roof starts to gather into fuller passages. One pane takes on a quicker sequence of strikes. Another begins to hold longer silver lines before they slip into the frame. Along the higher ribs, water joins more readily, so that what had been many slight movements becomes a slower and more visible flow. You do not need to shift in order to notice it. The roof tells you first. The sound broadens and deepens, not sharply, but in a way that fills more of the glass house at once. The panes above the chair no longer seem marked by scattered rain alone. They carry it in wider passages now, in fuller runs that gather, travel, divide, and gather again before disappearing into the channels at the edges. The lamp beside you changes the rain as much as the rain changes the roof. Where the water thickens across the panes, the amber light reflects more richly in it. Fine lines of gold appear for a moment on the glass, then break as the running water shifts them. A leaf reflected in the pane becomes softer and deeper in tone, half green shadow and half light. The silver of the weather and the warmth beneath it begin to overlap more fully, so that the roof above feels not only wet, but luminous in places where the rain catches what little light the lamps send upward. The garden beyond the glass withdraws even further. Whatever branch or path or outer wall might still have been guessed at through the panes is now almost entirely lost. The rain has drawn a second world across the glass, one made of moving water, blurred lamplight, and darkness pressed just beyond reach. Outside is no longer a place to be read at all. It has become weather only. Inside, the chair feels warmer by contrast. The wicker beneath your arms holds a steady, dry warmth. The shawl across your knees seems heavier now, not because it has changed, but because the fuller rain above makes its softness more noticeable. The air around you remains gently humid, touched by earth, leaf, clay, and the faint woody dryness of the chair and table. Nothing in the shelter answers the weather with alarm or strain. The lamps do not flicker. The plants do not tremble. The path remains where it is, quiet and dim between pots and benches. You draw the shawl a little higher. The movement is slight. One edge comes further across your lap. A fold settles more closely along one knee. Your hand lingers for a moment on the fabric, feeling the warmth it has gathered. Then your fingers rest again, and the small adjustment is done. The rain grows fuller for a time. Not violent, only more joined. The separate notes on the roof become a denser pattern. Along one section overhead, a broad run forms and slips the length of a pane before breaking into smaller threads near the frame. Another pane answers it with quicker strikes, brighter in sound for a few breaths. The channels begin to carry more water at once, and every now and then one gives a softer, steadier murmur as a gathered line disappears into it. From your chair, you can see this most clearly where the roof opens between leaves. Silver traces travel above in angled paths. Some hold straight, others curve slightly where they meet older runs. A few brighten momentarily as the lamp catches them from below, then darken again as they slip beyond the angle of the light. The whole roof appears to move, though the glass itself remains still, and the change belongs only to the water crossing it. You lean your head back a little more and listen. Rain on the higher panes, rain along the ribs, water threading into the channels. the low, warm stillness below it all. The contrast is one of the gentlest things in the room. Above, the weather has grown fuller and more active. Below, the glass house remains settled. The chair continues to hold you without effort. The terracotta pot beside you keeps its quiet shape. The leaves near the lamp carry their shadows as before, some edges lit, some deep green-black at the center. The small table beside your hand remains steady with its saucer and lamp base undisturbed. Nothing in the interior resists the weather. It simply receives the changed sound of it and grows, if anything, more sheltering because of it. A broad leaf near the chair catches a bead of moisture at its tip. The droplet brightens in the lamplight, trembles slightly, and then falls back into the dark soil below. Another forms after a while in almost the same place. Such small things become easier to notice when the body is still and the weather has taken over the roof. The richer rain overhead makes the air seem fuller too. Not hotter, not close, only more gathered, as if the glass house has drawn itself inward another degree while the water passes over it. The scents deepen with that feeling. Damp earth from the pots below, warm leaf and stem, terracotta holding the lamp's heat, the softened smell of wood, and somewhere underneath it all the faint, bright trace of herb or citrus that rises and fades without ever pressing forward. You glance beyond the chair towards the path. The benches are dimmer now under the thicker weather reflections above. Their edges are still visible, but more through shape than detail. The folded cloth on the farther bench has become only a pale strip in shadow. The path itself appears in shorter fragments between pots and leaves, as though the center of the glass house has become its own smaller world for the length of this rainfall, with the rest of the shelter gently receding into gold and green dimness. For a while, the rain keeps to that fuller measure. The roof answers it pane by pane. One run strengthens, another fades, then a third gathers where two meet. The channels hold their quiet passage. The lamps continue to glow through leaves and against clay. Seated where you are, you feel no reason at all to rise. The chair has become more than a place to pause. It has become the point from which the whole glass house can be received without any need to move within it. You rest one hand along the chair arm and the other lightly upon the shawl. The wicker pattern presses gently against your palm. The cloth beneath your fingers is warm and soft. The body settles another degree lower into the seat, not from tiredness exactly, but from trust in the place. The rain may go on above as long as it likes. The glass house knows how to hold it. Then, after some time, the weather begins to ease again. The change is subtle at first. One pane that had been carrying a broader line of water breaks back into finer threads. The brighter, quicker tapping on a section of roof softens and spreads apart. A channel that had been holding a steadier murmur becomes quieter, taking the water in a more delicate run. Little by little, the fuller rain loosens its hold and returns to a gentler pattern. You hear that easing before you fully see it. The roof sounds lighter, more varied again. Separate notes return where the denser rain had gathered them together. The silver traces above the chair grow narrower. Some still run the length of a pane, but most are finer now, pausing, joining, slipping on. The glass does not shine in broad, wet bands as much as it did a little while before. Instead, it resumes the layered life of many small moving lines. The reflections change with it. Where the heavier rain had turned the panes into richer, shifting surfaces of gold and silver, the finer weather now lets the lamplight appear in more delicate, broken shapes. The leaf shadows become a little clearer. The edges of the roof ribs show themselves again between the running water. The garden beyond remains unreadable, but it no longer feels pressed so closely against the shelter. The panes breathe a little more space back into the night. Inside, nothing has needed to change and answer. The chair still holds you. The shawl still rests across your knees. The table remains at your side. The broad pot beside you lifts its leaves towards the same low lamp. The path and benches continue in their quiet order. That continuity is one of the deepest comforts of the glass house. The weather may alter above. Water may gather, race, thin, and gather again across the roof. Yet beneath it, the sheltered world of leaf, clay, wood, warmth, and stillness goes on almost unchanged. You draw a breath and notice how rich the air has become after the fuller rain. Not heavy, only more fragrant. The damp earth seems deeper, the leaf scent broader, the terracotta a little warmer in tone, and smell where the lamps have rested on it through the weather. The whole house feels gently refreshed, as if the rain above has somehow renewed what was already living below without ever entering the space directly. For a little while, you simply remain. The roof has returned to its finer pattern. The channels carry quieter threads. The leaves near the lamp hold their layered shadow. The chair keeps its patient curve around you. No further gesture is needed. The small adjustment to the shawl is enough. The turning of pots and leaves in earlier blocks is enough. The rain itself has done the rest, giving the night another shape for a while, and then softening again until the shelter feels deeper for having held it. You lift your gaze once more to the panes overhead. The silver lines now are thinner and more graceful than before, moving independently where a little earlier they had gathered into fuller runs. One brightens and vanishes into the frame. Another trails the rib before slipping sideways into a channel. Higher up, a broader patch of glass holds only the dim sheen of the weather and the faintest suggestion of night beyond it. Then you lower your gaze to the chair, the lamp, and the leaves around you. This feels like the true center of the glass house now, not because it is the brightest part or the warmest, though it may be both, but because from here everything the night has to offer comes softened into its gentlest form. Rain on the roof, lamplight among leaves, warm air over stone, terracotta at rest, the garden beyond reduced to darkness and weather. You settle a little deeper into the chair, not enough to move the seat more than a whisper. The shawl remains high across your knees. One hand rests where it has come to rest. The other lies easy on the arm of the chair. Around you, the glass house returns to its earlier balance, but something in the shelter feels fuller now than it did before the heavier rain passed across the panes. The weather has moved on into a finer pattern again. The roof receives it, the panes carry it, the channels guide it, the lamps glow through it. And as you remain seated in the warm center of the glass house, with the fuller rain now softened back into silver lines above, and the little world of chair, shawl, clay, leaves, and low light gathered steadily around you, the shelter feels deeper than ever, as though the weather itself has confirmed that this is where you are meant to stay. You remain in the chair as the rain continues above the glass house, the shawl resting warmly across your knees, and the lamp beside you keeping its low, steady circle among leaves, clay, and wicker. The fuller rain that passed over the roof a little while ago has thinned again into finer silver lines. You hear them moving across the panes overhead, lighter now, though no less constant. The channels in the frame still carry their quiet threads of water. The broad pot near your chair keeps its leaves lifted in the same direction as before. The little table at your side remains almost bare, its saucer catching only a dim crescent of light. Nothing in the sheltered center has shifted enough to ask for notice unless you choose to give it. You do not need to move. The chair has already received you completely. The shawl has warmed, so fully across your knees that it feels less like something laid there and more like part of the resting place itself. One hand lies loose upon it. The other rests easily on the wicker arm or near the table edge, not holding anything, not preparing for anything, simply staying where it has come to rest. Your shoulders have dropped as far as they need to. Your back no longer resists the curve of the seat. Even the smallest readiness that belonged to standing and walking seems to have softened out of the body now. From where you sit, the glass house has narrowed to its most essential forms. The path is visible only in fragments between the leaves and the broad terracotta pot beside you. The benches further back have become low shapes holding dim rows of clay and green. The roof appears between stems and fronds in angled sections, pane after pane carrying rain in changing, delicate lines. The lamp near your chair glows through the leaves rather than around them, so that their shadows fall in layers over the table, the pot, and the floor. The garden outside is almost entirely gone. Not gone in truth, only in the sense that it has withdrawn beyond the glass until it no longer offers itself as a place to be followed. There may still be branches beyond the panes. There may still be wet stone paths and dark flower beds, and the long garden wall holding the night beyond the shelter. Yet from here, all of that has receded into weather and shadow. What remains clear is inside. The chair, the shawl, the lamp, the leaves, the clay, the soft rain overhead. You lift your gaze a little and watch the panes between the leaves. The rain moves there in fine, separate paths, some joining briefly before slipping apart again. One narrow line brightens where the lamp catches it from below, then darkens as it crosses into shadow. Another forms beneath a rib and travels steadily for the length of a pane before vanishing into the frame. On the glass nearest the lamp, the reflection of the light rests as a warm, blurred oval, broken, and remade by every passing thread of water. Leaf shadow doubles itself on the wet panes. A broadleaf near your shoulder appears in softened form upon the glass behind it, darker at the center, and warmer at the edge where the light touches both leaf and reflection together. A fern further back seems to repeat itself in layers, one frond real, another held faintly in the pane, and a third made only of shadow where the glass darkens. Rain passes over all of it, drawing the inside and outside together for a breath, and then breaking them apart again. The longer you look, the less it seems to matter which belongs to the room and which belongs to the reflection. The lamp is in the glass. The leaves are in the glass. The rain is on the glass. The darkness waits beyond the glass, and beneath all of it, you remain seated, held in the warm center while the panes above and around you turn weather, light, and shadow into one soft moving surface. The roof speaks quietly over your head, not with one sound, but with many that have learned to live together. Fine rainfall on the higher panes, a slower thread entering one of the channels, the faintest, fuller run traveling along a rib before thinning out again. Somewhere above the path beyond your chair, another line of water joins it and passes on. None of these sounds rises above the others. They remain part of the same continuous weather, softened by glass, spread by structure, and held above the stiller world below. You settle a fraction deeper into the chair. The movement is so small that it hardly deserves the name. The wicker gives softly beneath your shoulders and then grows still again. One edge of the shawl slides by no more than a finger's width over your knee. The broad pot beside you remains where it is, its leaves neither touched nor disturbed. Yet after this almost unnoticeable adjustment, the resting place feels more complete than before, as though the body has found the exact shape in which it can remain without wanting anything altered. The warm air has grown richer since the fuller rain passed over the roof. It carries earth from the pots below the benches, the green freshness of leaves held in humidity, terracotta warmed by the lamp, and the faint, dry undertone of wood and wicker. Somewhere within it, there is still the smallest brightness of herb or citrus, not strong enough to stand apart, only enough to sharpen the air for a moment before it folds back into the larger scent of the glasshouse. Breathing it in feels less like noticing separate things and more like receiving one complete atmosphere. A small change comes above you, not in the room below, but in the way the water travels over one pane near the lamp. For some time, the rain there has been dividing itself into several fine downward lines. Now, two of those lines gather together just beneath the rib and make a brighter, fuller path. It travels a little more quickly than the others, catches the lamp in a narrow band of gold, and then breaks apart again before it reaches the frame. The whole change lasts only a few moments. Yet, because the room is so still below it, even that tiny alteration feels enough to keep the roof alive without ever disturbing its calm. You watch it happen, and then let it go. No other change follows immediately. The rain resumes its more delicate, separate passages. The reflection on the pane settles back into its familiar blurred lamp shape, with leaves crossing it in softer shadow. The channels continue their quiet work at the edge of the roof. That is enough. The stillness here is not the stillness of nothing happening. It is the stillness in which small things are allowed to matter gently and then fade again without any need to pursue them. A drop gathering, a reflection shifting, a leaf shadow deepening as the lamp catches another angle of glass, the slight warmth of the shawl against your hand, the chair holding its shape around you while the rain keeps its patient course above. You let your head rest more completely back. The woven back of the chair supports you without stiffness. The air around your face feels warm and lightly humid. The shawl across your knees has become a quiet weight that asks for no adjustment. The hand near the chair arm no longer expects to lift. The hand resting on the cloth no longer expects to move. Every part of the body seems to have learned from the glasshouse what the room itself already knows, that nothing urgent belongs here. Through the break in the leaves, the roof shows one darker stretch where the lamp reaches less fully. Rain still crosses it, though only in dimmer silver now, and beyond it there is almost nothing to suggest the outer world at all. No branch presses clearly against the pane. No path flashes back from the wet dark outside. There is only the idea of weather moving beyond the glass while the inside remains a room of warm leaf shade and low light. You no longer need the outside to give you anything. No shape to follow. No view to name. No sign to read. The glass house has become enough. The broad pot beside your chair. The small table at your elbow. The leaves gathering around the lamp. The path half hidden beyond them. The roof carrying rain overhead. The warm air below the glass. This is all the world the night needs to offer now. For a little while, you simply remain. Rain on the panes. Water in the channels, the low lamp through leaves, warm clay and wicker nearby, the shawl over your knees, your breathing easing into the room. The more quietly the body rests, the more these things seem to belong to one another. Not separate details, but parts of the same held atmosphere. The rain does not feel apart from the lamp. The lamp does not feel apart from the leaves. The leaves do not feel apart from the warm air, or the warm air from the chair, or the chair from the stillness settling through your shoulders and hands. A broad leaf near the lamp catches one small droplet at its tip. It holds there for several breaths, brightened by the low amber light. Then it releases and falls back into the soil below with a sound too small to break the calm. Another droplet begins to gather after it, though more slowly this time, as if even the water within the glass house has taken on the patient rhythm of the night. You listen again to the roof. The finer rain remains. The channels keep their quiet threads. One pane, somewhere above the path beyond your chair, receives a slightly quicker sequence of drops for a moment, then returns to the same softer pattern as the rest. There is comfort in how little these changes require of you. They happen whether you watch them or not. You feel the warmth of the shawl through your resting hand. The cloth has molded itself to the line of your knees. Near the edge where it falls over the chair arm, it is a little cooler, touched by the air that moves near the panes. Nearer the center, it holds its deeper warmth. The contrast is slight, but at this hour, such small things are enough. The difference between cloth and wicker, the low heat of the lamp on one side of the broad pot, the cooler shadow beneath the table, the soft, damp richness of the soil in the pots nearest the chair. Time loosens in a place like this, not because it disappears, but because nothing divides it very sharply. There are no tasks left to complete, no path to continue following just now. No need to turn a pot or straighten a cloth or move further into the house. There is only the chair, the warm center of the glass house, and the weather passing over the panes above while the sheltered room below remains untroubled. The glass house has become its own night world. The roof carries the rain. The panes hold reflection and shadow. The lamps keep their gold among the leaves. The path waits between the benches. The chair keeps you where you are. And seated there, with the shawl warmed across your knees, the lamp glowing low beside you, the broad terracotta pot steady at your side, and the rain tracing silver lines over the dark panes above, you no longer feel like someone resting inside the glass house for a while. You feel like part of the same quiet shelter it has been making all night, held gently in its warm, leafy center, while the weather continues beyond the glass. You remain in the chair for a little while longer, with the shawl warm across your knees and the low lamp beside you holding its quiet circle among clay, wicker, and leaves. The rain continues overhead in its finer pattern, tracing the panes in silver lines and feeding the frame channels with a steadier, softer flow than before. Around you, the glass house keeps the same warm, enclosed atmosphere it has held for some time now. The broad pot remains beside the chair. The little table keeps its saucer and lamp base. The path beyond lies partly hidden among leaves and bench shadows. Nothing asks to be altered. Nothing feels unfinished. Yet after a while, a small inclination to move returns, not from restlessness, only from the body's quiet wish to shift once more before settling fully for the deeper part of the night. The idea comes gently, without urgency. You sit with it for a few moments, still listening to the rain on the roof and the softened stillness below it. Then you place one hand on the wicker arm and let the other gather the shawl by a little at the edge. The chair supports the first movement easily. The shawl slides from your knees with a softened weight and settles across the seat where the warmth remains held within its folds. As you lean forward and rise, the room changes in the same quiet way it did earlier in the night when you first stood from stillness. The air feels a little different once you are upright. The warmth remains, but it is layered differently now. Fuller near the lamps and the center of the house, cooler by a small degree near the panes and the shadowed edges of the path. The floor beneath your feet receives you in old stone steadiness, darker where the light does not reach, warmer in tone where the lamps stretch across it. You stand beside the chair for a moment and let the room rearrange itself from this height. The seat now holds the shape you left in it, the shawl resting in a folded curve across the wicker. The broad terracotta pot stands lower than before, its leaves catching the light at their upper edges while their centers remain dark. The table beside it looks smaller now, reduced to a circle of wood and clay under the lamp. Beyond, the path seems more open again, though still softened by leaves and shadow. The roof reveals itself differently too, no longer framed only in fragments from the chair, but stretching in longer panes between the higher growth. You turn and take a few slow steps along the path. The movement is quiet and close. One stone gives back a softer note than the next. Your sleeve brushes lightly past the edge of a fern, and then a broader leaf nearer the lamp. The plants at shoulder height and waist height feel more present while standing. They rise beside you rather than surrounding you from below, and their leaves carry the warmth of the room in different ways, some dry and smooth, others holding a little gathered dampness near the panes. The chair remains behind you within easy sight. That matters. You are not leaving the warm center of the glass house, so much as stepping briefly beyond its nearest circle of light. From here, looking back, the chair seems even more clearly a chosen place of rest. The wicker back catches the lamp in a honey brown curve. The folded shawl lies ready across the seat. The pot beside it and the table at its elbow keep that small corner gathered into a complete little arrangement of warmth and shelter. A second lamp glows a little further along the path, partly veiled by leaves. Its light is lower and dimmer than the one by the chair, and because of that, the shadows around it feel softer and more distinctly late night. It stands near a narrower bench or low shelf where a few smaller pots rest in a line, and a folded cloth lies near the end. The lamp does not need much adjustment, yet as you come close, you can see that its wick might be turned down by the smallest measure to let the glass house settle further into night. You rest your fingers against the lamp base first. The metal is faintly warm. The light it casts touches the nearest leaf, the top edge of a clay pot, and the wood of the bench beneath. Around that small circle of illumination, the glass house deepens quickly into green-brown shadow. Rain on the panes above catches the lamp only lightly here, in more broken reflections than at the chair. You adjust the wick by the smallest degree. The change is immediate, though gentle. The flame draws inward a little. The light contracts closer to the lamp itself. The leaf nearest the bench loses some of its brighter edge and settles into a richer shadow. The cloth at the end of the bench becomes dimmer and softer in outline. Even the wet panes above take the alteration at once, where before they held a wider blur of amber reflection, they now carry a narrower thread of gold among the silver rain. You pause to make sure the flame remains steady. It does. The lamp now feels more suited to the hour, less like a working light, and more like a quiet marker of warmth among the leaves. The little bench below it keeps its shapes without asking to be read too closely. The pots remain where they are, their clay darkened towards the base, their rims warm where a little of the light still touches them. The folded cloth lies undisturbed. Nothing else needs doing there. You stay beside that dimmer lamp for a little while and look up towards the panes above this narrower section. The rain shows itself differently here than it did from the chair. The roof is seen at a sharper angle, with one rib running almost directly above and another disappearing into the darker edge of the frame. Water gathers along one line and slips sideways before finding its downward course. A second run comes straighter, brightened briefly where the lower flame reaches it from beneath. The silver threads seem finer here, more solitary, perhaps because the darker corner lets each one stand apart a little longer before it joins another and disappears into shadow. Beyond the glass, the garden is no more readable from this side of the house than before. If anything, it is less so. The deeper shadow created by the lowered lamp has made the panes more inward-looking. Rain and reflection now lie more closely together, with the outside kept back as blue-black weather and the merest suggestion of branch or wall beyond. The glass house feels more enclosed for it, not shut in, only gathered more closely around its own lamps, plants, and warm air. You rest a hand on the bench edge and let the atmosphere settle. The wood is cooler here than the table by the chair, perhaps because this section stands nearer the panes and further from the warmer center. The air around your face and hands still carries its humid leaf-scented warmth, but at the edge of it there is a finer coolness from the glass and rain beyond. The contrast is slight, and because it is slight, it feels all the more restful. Warmth held at the center, coolness only hinted at around the borders, the whole shelter balanced perfectly between them. A leaf near the lamp shifts almost imperceptibly. Not from wind, for there is none within the glass house, but from the little change in shadow and the weight of a droplet slipping from one surface to another. It moves, catches the reduced glow, and settles again. That is enough variation to keep the corner alive without disturbing its stillness. For a while, you do nothing more than stand and listen. Fine rain on the panes above, a quieter run of water through the frame, the low lamp now smaller in its glow, a leaf settling back into shadow, the hush below the roof where bench, pots, cloth, and path all remain undisturbed. The lowered lamp has changed more than light alone. It has made the whole glass house feel a little deeper, a little closer to its own midnight heart. The brighter edges have softened. The spaces between lamps hold more of their natural darkness. Leaves are no longer simply lit or unlit, but gathered into gentler layers of gold, olive, and shadow. Even the rain seems finer because the reflections below it have narrowed and quietened. After a little while, the thought of the chair returns again. Not because this corner is lacking, but because the brief movement has made the chair's warmth feel more definite in the mind. You can see it from here between stems and dimmer lamp glow. The wicker curve, the folded shawl on the seat, the broad pot beside it, the steadier lamp nearby holding the small central area together. What was already restful before now appears even more so by contrast. You turn back along the path. Your steps are no quicker than before. The stone receives them softly. The path seems shorter now, not because the distance has changed, but because the glass house itself has become so familiar that even its shadowed sections no longer feel separate from the place where you mean to rest. As you pass back through the leaves, the roof shows itself again in fragments overhead, silver lines of rain crossing the panes, while the lowered lamp behind you leaves that section of the house in deeper quiet than before. The chair waits where you left it. That waiting has its own comfort. The shawl still lies folded across the seat. The lamp beside it keeps the warmer center gently lit. The broad terracotta pot remains steady near your knee's future resting place. The table beside the chair carries the same small saucer and soft ring of light. Nothing has changed there, and because of that, the return feels easy. You place a hand on the back of the chair and lower yourself into it once more. The wicker gives softly and settles. The shape of the seat receives you even more readily than before, as though the body remembers it now and no longer needs to test its comfort. You draw the shawl back across your knees, and the retained warmth within its folds gathers around you almost at once. One edge falls across your lap, the other against the arm of the chair. The gesture feels less like arranging something than like restoring a shelter already made. At once, the difference is clear. The chair feels warmer now than when you first left it. The lamp beside you feels steadier. The broad pot nearer your knee and the little table at your side define the space more firmly than before. Even the shadows among the leaves seem more restful now that the second lamp has been lowered and the whole glass house has taken one step further into night. From the chair again, you can sense that change without looking directly for it. The path beyond the pot is dimmer. The far bench is softer in outline. The panes hold narrower amber reflections among the silver rain. The leaves between one lamp and the next keep more of their own dark. Nothing has been lost by the change. The room has only deepened. You let your shoulders ease back and your hands rest where they fall naturally. The shawl lies warm across your knees once more. The chair arm supports one hand. The other rests on the cloth or near the table edge. The rain continues overhead with the same finer pattern it held before. Yet now the glass house feels more fully settled for the night, as though the small gesture of lowering the lamp has helped the shelter close itself gently around its own warmth and quiet. For a little while, you simply remain there and notice what the brief movement has changed. Not the weather, not the warmth, not the glass house itself in any large way, only the feeling of the hour. It is later now in the quality of the light, even if no clock has marked it. The brighter usefulness of lamps has given way to a softer, more inward glow. The shadows have become part of the room rather than empty spaces between things. The rain on the panes feels more private. The chair, the shawl, the leaves around the lamp, and the warm air around your face all seem to belong more fully to rest than before. The small movement through the glass house has done its work. You rose, you crossed the path, you lowered one lamp, you stood for a moment beneath another section of panes. Then you returned, that is all. Yet, because of that little circuit, the chair has become even more clearly the place meant to hold you through the next stretch of the night. The rain continues in silver lines above the roof panes. The lowered lamp leaves the further section in gentler shadow. The lamp beside your chair keeps its low, warm circle among the leaves. The broad terracotta pot remains steady near your knee. The shawl rests across you once more, and seated there again, with the glass house now a little dimmer, a little deeper, and more perfectly settled into its rainy night than before, you feel the shelter gather around you in an even quieter way, as though the house itself has accepted that nothing more needs to be done. You remain in the wicker chair with the shawl warm across your knees, and the glass house around you feels quieter now that the further lamp has been lowered, and the whole space has settled another degree into night. The lamp beside you still keeps its low amber circle among the leaves, but beyond that nearest pool of light, the room has changed. The bench further off is now softer in outline than before. The folded cloth resting there has become only a pale shape in shadow. The path that runs between the pots and staging no longer carries the same clear stepping line it held earlier. Instead, it appears in shorter pieces between leaves and terracotta, as though the glass house has drawn its warmer center closer around the chair and allowed the rest to recede gently into green-brown dimness. From where you sit, that deepened shadow does not make the room feel smaller in any cramped way. It makes the room feel more complete. The lowered lamp has taken away nothing you need. It has only softened what lies beyond your immediate circle of warmth, so that the chair, the table, the broad terracotta pot, the leaves nearest the lamp, and the silver roof panes above now hold the center of the night more clearly than before. You let your hands rest where they have come to rest. One lies lightly on the shawl, which has gathered enough warmth now to feel almost as though it belongs to the chair rather than to you alone. The other settles on the wicker arm or near the table edge, touching wood or woven fiber that has held the lamp's warmth for some time. The body no longer carries even the faint readiness that came with standing, walking, or choosing where to sit. It has accepted the chair. The chair has accepted the body. That simple agreement seems to pass outward into the rest of the glass house. The broad pot beside your knee is part of that agreement too. Its clay curve catches a muted band of light on the side nearest the lamp, while the far side falls away into darker terracotta brown. The leaves rising from it now seem quieter than before, not because they have changed, but because the dimmer glass house around them has made their nearness more intimate. One edge glows softly. Another disappears into shadow. The dark soil below them holds its own quiet depth, warm in scent, though almost unlit. You glance beyond the pot towards the path, where earlier the line of the stones could be followed between one pool of light and the next. Now the route is felt more than seen. A warm patch of floor near the chair, a darker interval, the suggestion of another lit edge beneath the further bench. After that, only the sense of the path continuing on through leaf shadow and dim glass towards parts of the house that no longer need to be clearly read. The rain overhead has settled into its late-night pattern. It no longer gathers itself into fuller runs as it did a little while before. Instead, it moves in finer silver threads, pane by pane, with the occasional longer line slipping down a rib or into a channel before thinning again. The change is subtle, but from the chair you hear it as a lighter, more even weather. Not less present, only more fully absorbed into the roof. The whole upper span of the glasshouse seems to breathe with it quietly. Where the panes are visible between leaves, the reflections have narrowed. The lamp beside you no longer throws a broad amber haze across the glass. It appears instead in smaller, softer shapes broken by passing water. The lowered lamp further away leaves only the faintest warm trace on a few panes at the edge of sight. Between those points of gold, the roof carries mostly rain and darkness, with the ribs appearing as darker lines beneath the moving silver. You turn your head a little and take in more of the room without leaving the chair. The table at your elbow, the terracotta pot, the path beyond, the dimmer bench and lower lamp further off, the leaves crossing one another in layers of shadow, the panes above carrying rain into the frame channels. The garden outside now little more than weather pressed softly against the glass. The chair corner is its warmest center, but the rest belongs to it too. The potting bench further back, the narrow shelves, the tubs under taller growth, the path crossing from one pool of light to another, the roof above it all, receiving the weather and letting it pass in softened form over the shelter below. None of these parts needs to stand apart now. They are held together by the hour, the rain, and the low, steady lamps. You make one small adjustment and then no more. The shawl has slipped by the smallest amount along one knee, and you draw it a little closer across your lap. Not enough to rearrange it fully, only enough to restore the warm weight where it rests most comfortably. Your hand lingers there for a moment, feeling the softened cloth, then grows still again. That tiny gesture is enough to settle both body and chair another degree deeper into the evening. Nothing else asks for even that much. The table does not need tidying. The lamp does not need touching again. The pot remains steady. The benches keep their quiet order. The roof already knows what to do with the rain. That is one of the deepest comforts of the glasshouse now. There is no sense of waiting for some final task. The space has already gone as far into rest as it needs to go. Your part in it is no longer to tend, turn, adjust, or walk. It is simply to remain. The rain on the roof and panes keeps to its fine, patient pattern. One thread brightens where it crosses a reflection. Another disappears into the frame. A slower line gathers under a rib near the higher section, then slips sideways before vanishing into shadow. Somewhere at the edge of hearing, one of the channels carries a little more water for a few moments, then quiets again. These are not changes that ask to be followed closely. They only remind you that the weather is still there, still moving, still surrounding the shelter, while the warmth within remains untouched. The garden outside is reduced almost entirely to darkness now. If a branch leans against the pane, it does, so only as a faint suggestion. If wet stone outside catches a trace of the lamp, it does, so too briefly to form a proper image. Almost everything beyond the glass has given itself over to rain and shadow. The panes no longer work as windows in any ordinary sense. They work as the edges of the shelter, surfaces where weather, reflection, and the idea of the world outside meet and soften one another. You sink a little more into the chair without consciously choosing to. The wicker receives the shift and then stills. The shawl keeps its warmth. The air around your face remains gently humid, carrying earth, clay, leaf, and the faint, dry note of wood. Somewhere within that gathered scent is still the smallest hint of herb or citrus from deeper within the house, though it no longer seems to come from any one place. It belongs to the room as a whole now. A leaf near the lamp moves almost imperceptibly when a drop releases from its tip. The movement is so slight that it is over almost before it begins. The leaf settles. The droplet falls back into the dark soil below. The lamp goes on glowing through the leaves exactly as before. Such tiny motions seem enough at this hour. They do not wake the stillness, they belong to it. You listen again. Fine rain on the roof panes. A softer run through one channel. The deep hush below the weather. The low lamp through leaves. No footsteps. No voices. No more signs of movement than the room itself chooses to make. The body no longer prepares to rise. That perhaps is the clearest change in this block. Earlier, even in the chair, some part of you still belonged faintly to the possibility of standing, crossing the path, touching the bench, or turning to follow a different angle of the roof. Now that possibility has softened away. The chair does not feel like one place among others in the glass house. It feels like the place that has been chosen, accepted, and given over to rest. The wider room seems to know that too. The dimmer bench further away holds its shapes in silence. The lowered lamp keeps its smaller glow. The path is no longer asking to be followed. The roof keeps the weather above. The panes hold rain and reflection. The warm center remains gathered around the chair. Nothing in that arrangement suggests anything more must happen. You lift your gaze to the roof once more. The silver lines there are finer than ever now, barely more than moving traces against the darkness beyond. The ribs seem darker by comparison. Here and there one pane carries a slightly fuller line for a few breaths before it thins again. The reflection of the lamp beside you remains narrow and late, as though even the glass has settled into a quieter kind of seeing. Then you lower your gaze again to the chair corner. The table edge beside you, the terracotta pot near your knee, the shawl over your lap, the wicker arm beneath your hand, the lamp low among the leaves, the path fading away into restful shadow. The whole of the glass house now feels closed around warmth, not by any door fastened more tightly than before, but by the simple fact that the night has gone deep enough for everything unnecessary to fall back. What remains nearest has become all that matters. For a little while, you simply sit and let the room continue around you. The rain remains fine and patient above the panes. The channels carry their quiet threads. The leaves keep their layered shadows. The clay holds the lamp's warmth. The chair keeps its curve around your resting body. The longer you remain, the more the glass house seems to rest with you rather than around you. It is no longer only a shelter filled with benches, pots, panes, lamps, and rain. It has become a place that has gone to rest for the night in the same way the body has not asleep exactly, but fully released from the need to do anything else. And seated there in the wicker chair, with the shawl warm across your knees, one lamp low beside you, and the other dimmer further off, the path fading into shadow, the benches quiet, and the rain tracing its fine late-night lines above the dark panes, the whole glass house settles into its deepest resting shape yet, ready to hold you through the final stillness of the night. The chair holds you where you are, and by now that small corner of the glass house feels complete enough that nothing beyond it needs to be followed any longer. The shawl remains warm across your knees. The lamp beside you keeps its low amber circle over the wicker arm, the edge of the little table, the broad curve of terracotta near your knee, and the leaves nearest the chair. Above, the roof continues to receive the rain in its fine late-night pattern. Beyond the panes, there is almost nothing to be read now except darkness and weather. Everything that belongs to shelter is already close at hand. You rest more fully into the chair. Your shoulders have long since given up their last holding. Your head leans back without effort. One hand lies open upon the shawl, the other easy on the wicker arm or the table edge. The seat has taken your weight so completely that it no longer feels like something beneath you. It feels simply like the shape in which you now remain while the rain moves over the panes and the night continues beyond the glass. The body no longer prepares to rise. There is no trace of that readiness left now. No sense of needing to cross the path again, touch a bench, or look more closely at any part of the house. The chair has become the resting place entirely. The shawl has become part of that resting place too, holding its gathered warmth over your knees and lap. Even your hands seem to have understood that nothing is required of them except to remain where they have settled. Above you, the rain continues without asking anything to change. It no longer thickens or thins in any way that matters much. It keeps its fine silver movement over the roof panes, some lines running quickly, some slower, some pausing just long enough to gather, and then slip into the ribs and channels. Here and there one thread brightens where the lamp reaches it from below. Another vanishes into a darker section of glass and is lost. The weather has found its night rhythm now, and the roof carries it with the same calm certainty that the chair carries you. You lift your gaze only a little. Between the leaves, the panes appear in angled pieces, dark at their edges, and silver where the rain catches what little light rises from within the house. The reflection of the lamp beside you is narrower than before, a soft amber shape broken by passing lines of water. In some panes, a leaf is doubled faintly in the glass, first as itself, and then as shadow or reflection behind the silver rain. Beyond those layers, there is almost nothing. The garden has withdrawn entirely into weather and dark. The panes have become less like windows than like a soft boundary. On one side of that boundary, rain, darkness, the unseen garden, the wider night. On the other, lamp, wicker, terracotta, warm air, leaves, and stillness. The glass does not divide these worlds sharply. It lets them meet and soften one another. The rain is visible because the warmth is below it. The warmth feels deeper because the rain continues above. The dark beyond gives shape to the shelter within. Everything belongs to one held atmosphere. You let your fingers rest more loosely still on the shawl. The cloth beneath them feels warm and soft enough now that the difference between fabric and skin has become slight. Near the edge where the shawl falls over the arm of the chair, the air touches it a little more coolly. Near the center, it holds a deeper warmth. Such small things are enough at this hour. The curve of wicker under one hand, the weight of cloth over your knees, the muted warmth of the pot beside you, the softly damp richness of the air around leaves and clay. The chair corner has become a whole world of its own. The wicker back behind your shoulders, the shawl over your knees, the lamp low at your side, the broad terracotta pot near your hand, the small table holding almost nothing at all, the path fading away beyond the leaves, the roof sounding quietly overhead. Nothing else is needed. A little while passes with no reason to measure it. The rain continues on the panes. The channels carry their quiet threads. The lamp remains low and steady. The leaves hold their layered shadows. The air stays warm with earth, leaf, clay, faint wood, and the softened trace of lamp oil. Because nothing asks to happen next, time loosens. The minutes no longer feel separate from one another. The night is no longer a sequence of small passages through the glass house, nor a series of pauses beneath different sections of roof. It has become one continuous resting within shelter, while the weather carries on above. You breathe in and let the breath go slowly. The air you draw into yourself has the same familiar richness it has held for many blocks now, only softer because you are no longer trying to identify it as anything separate. Warm soil beneath the pots, leaves held in humid stillness, terracotta keeping the low heat of the lamp, wicker and wood faintly dry beneath it all. The whole scent of the glass house has become one quiet thing, like the room itself. A droplet gathers at the tip of one leaf near the lamp. It brightens for a moment, hanging there at the edge of the warm circle of light. Then it releases and falls into the pot below with a sound too small to disturb the stillness. After that, another begins to form in nearly the same place. The leaf remains where it is. The lamp keeps its glow. The rain overhead continues unchanged. Even the smallest movement in the room belongs to the same calm. You do not need to watch it closely. Nothing here needs watching closely now. The weather knows how to continue. The roof knows how to carry it. The channels know how to take the water on. The lamps know how to keep their low gold among the leaves. The chair knows how to hold you where you are. And because all of that is true, there is no need for effort in you either. The glass house feels as though it has gone to rest with you. Not asleep, not silent, only fully settled. The further lamp remains lower than before, leaving the bench beyond in gentler shadow. The path between one pool of light and the next has become little more than a suggestion between leaf and clay. The benches and staging deeper in the house hold their shapes without asking to be clearly seen. The panes above and around keep their narrow amber reflections and fine silver rain. The whole room is quieter now in the way late night rooms become quieter even when their sounds continue. You turn your gaze once more through the leaves and up into the roof. The rain there seems finer than ever now, not because it has lessened, but because your own attention has softened enough to receive it as texture rather than event. Silver lines, one after another, crossing dark panes. A brighter thread near a rib. A softer flow into a channel. Reflections broken and remade. Nothing abrupt. Nothing that asks to be followed to its end. When you lower your gaze again, the chair corner seems warmer by comparison. The broad pot near your knee holds its dark soil and still leaves. The table edge catches a slim line of gold. The wicker arm beneath your hand carries its woven pattern clearly where the lamp touches it, and more softly where it turns away into shadow. The shawl rests over you with quiet weight. All of these things are so near and so unchanged that the rest of the glass house might almost be imagined from them alone. For a while, there is only the repeated cadence. Rain above, lamp beside you, shawl over your knees, chair beneath your shoulders. Leaf shadow around the light, water threading through the channels, your breathing easing into the same soft measure. Nothing interrupts, nothing needs to. The glass house can continue perfectly well on its own. And because it can, you do not need to carry anything at all. The chair carries your weight, the shawl carries its warmth, the lamp carries its small circle of gold, the roof carries the rain. The panes carry reflection and weather together. The night carries everything beyond the glass. You remain where you are, with your head at rest, your hands loose, and the warm leafy shelter gathered around you in its deepest late-night shape. The weather continues above the panes in fine silver lines. The garden remains outside as darkness and rain. The leaves near the lamp hold their shadows. The benches beyond stay quiet in their dimness. No path asks to be followed. No object asks to be touched. No further movement belongs to the night. And in that wicker chair, with the shawl settled over your knees, the lamp low beside you, the rain moving softly over the roof and panes, and the whole glass house resting around you in warmth, leaf shadow, and stillness, the night comes to its quietest form. Not departure, not ending, only rest within shelter, deep enough that nothing more is needed.